Hello lovers, welcome back to another For the Marriage video. I am Nicole Hansen, a marriage coach. And if this is your first time here, one, welcome. Two, make sure you find that subscribe button below and click it. Over here on For the Marriage, we talk about all things marriage, and our mission is to provide positive content, services, and products that help marriages reconnect, thrive, and build fulfilling marriages worth having. So if you are looking for a community like that, then make sure you go ahead and click that subscribe button. Three, thank you so much for joining me in this video. For my old lovers, you know, it's always a pleasure to have you back. I feel like I have a good topic for us today, so let's go ahead and get into it. So I wanted to do this topic because I think it's very important for us to touch on responsibility of poor communication in a marriage. Now, I know that it's understood that there will be poor communication, or maybe it's not, right? People always talk about how communication is key, and yes, it is very important to communicate in your marriage. But we also have to be realistic that communication is something that is forever changing in a marriage, right? There are going to be those good times where your communication is doing really well, and then there's going to be those bad times when your marriage is struggling and your communication is probably going to be struggling as well too. So although communication is key, we also have to keep in mind that it's very important for us to deal with communication as we continue to go through our marriage, because communication is going to change. So I wanted to do this video and talk about taking responsibility for poor communication in your marriage. Now, there are three overall topics that I am going to discuss in this video. So there is an overarching responsibility that I definitely want to address up front, which is not settling for poor communication in your marriage. And with this, we have to understand that some people enter marriage and have horrible communication, and some people actually enter marriage and have good communication, and as they go through the marriage and the challenges of life in marriage, then their communication is sometimes weakened. So whether you're entering your marriage and you and your spouse are not communicating well, then understand that it's both spouses' responsibility to build a foundation where communication runs smooth, and being able to fix it when you run into those poor communication phases or stages of marriage. And then for those who are communicating well, it's always important for you to continue to build on your communication, because as you change, as your spouse change, the communication may change as well too. So do not settle for poor communication. And this may look like, oh, we don't communicate well, so we just don't really talk about things. Or maybe that's a deep conversation that is supposed to be had, but because you all don't go into the deep conversation, you're more surface level. How is your day? What do you want to eat? Things of such like that. Like those are those basic conversations, like surface level conversations. You're not really getting into the nitty gritty deep conversations like, how do you feel our marriage is going? Like, you know, how do you feel I am as a spouse? Like, are you still feeling attracted to me? And things like that. Those are those deep conversations that can, you know, spark a situation depending on how the person who is asking the question receives the answer, right? So you always know that you're not going to settle for poor communication, but you're going to understand that we are going to have deep conversations. We are going to have those times where our communication is not the best, but I'm not going to settle for poor communication. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into our first tip. In order to not settle for poor communication, you have to understand who you are communicating with. So what does that mean? You need to understand if you are communicating at your spouse's level. Now, we all know that some people are logical thinkers and some people are emotional thinkers. Some people are passive aggressive. So you really just need to know who your spouse is and how they communicate, right? So we'll use the logical and emotional thinker for an example. If one spouse is a logical thinker and the other spouse is an emotional thinker, and the emotional thinker comes to the logical spouse and says, hey, this, that, and the other, and then the logical thinker throws back some questions that offends the emotional thinker, you have to understand, like, the logical thinker may be throwing questions back to help them understand how the emotional thinker is really feeling, because what the emotional thinker said to the logical thinker was not really clicking in their brain, which could cause arguments, right? The logical thinker, and I'm not trying to take away from what a logical thinker may do or say, but what I'm saying is they may not understand what the emotional thinker is really trying to tell them. So they're asking their questions to help them better understand what has been brought to them. So understand how your spouse communicates. That is going to be the first thing to help you not settle for poor communication. Because if you don't understand how your spouse communicates, then you're automatically going to be like, we never can talk. You always feel this way. You're always talking like this. You're always making me feel like this. And it's really probably just to help. The questions that they ask is probably just to help them understand better what you are bringing to the table. So that's number one. Number two is both spouses need to take responsibility when there is some poor communication going on, right? When you're not talking, when you're, avoiding a conversation or a situation, you're just sweeping things underneath the rug. Both spouses need to take responsibility of the poor communication stage that they're in. Understand, yes, there are going to be hard times. Understand, yes, there are going to be hard conversations that need to be had. But at the end of the day, when you and your spouse are not talking for days, weeks, months at a time, that is actually hurting your marriage. So somebody needs to say, you know what, we've been doing this for long enough. Let's go ahead. Whether we're talking through letters, text, I don't care. Like, we just need to communicate, because yes, communication should be from face to face, verbal to verbal, right? We both understanding. But sometimes people are not just there just yet. And then some people may say, well, why did they get married, right? But anywho, and that's a whole different story for a whole different day, right? But at the end of the day, you may have to build to be able to speak to your spouse face to face. So sometimes it may be, we'll start off by text messages. Okay, is that not working? Okay, maybe we need to go to letters. You know what I mean? Maybe we need to go seek a third party to help us better communicate. Whatever the case may be, do it. Take responsibility for that. Understand that, no, we should not just be sitting here in this house for 2-3 weeks at a time, not speaking to each other. At some point, we need to talk to each other, because then what that causes people to start to feel unsure of their marriage, and there's other issues, right, that can be brought up because you have gone so long without communication. So tip number 2 again is both spouses needing to take responsibility for a poor communication situation. All right. And then tip number 3. Tip number 3 is going to be to continue to work on your communication. You never stop learning in your marriage. It's like life, right? You always want to be a student in this thing that we call life. We can always get better at everything we do in life, because nobody is perfect, right? And although you and your spouse may be in this sweet spot with communication, at some point that could turn. And are you ready to be again, or are you ready to experience like a hard, challenging situation? Because when you're going through a challenging situation, that is really what is going to determine how you all communicate and how good your communication really is. And as you continue to go through life, you continue to mature, you continue to change. Communication is also going to do the same thing. So always continue to work on communicating with your spouse. Some days it may be easy, the other days it may be hard, but at the end of the day, if you continue to work on communication, and I love a good question, right? I love a good question game. I'll give you all a date night idea in this video here. Go and buy some question cards, because they have so many question cards out there that will have you asking your spouse some things that you've never thought of, right? And then that way, when those things start to present in your marriage, whatever they are, whether financial issues, health issues, parenting, whatever the case may be, you and your spouse have already discussed it, so you already kind of know how they're feeling, and and then that makes the conversation or the conversation a little bit more easier, which makes the communication a little bit more better. So again, I think number 3 is probably the biggest one, is always continue to work on communicating with your spouse. Now, I really do think that this was a good video. Now that I'm about to wrap it up, I think that it's very important for us to understand that, yes, poor communication is going to find its way into our marriage at some point in time, but we as the spouses within those marriages need to take ownership of our marriage in those poor communication little times or stages that we may go through in marriage. Okay, so if you enjoy this video, I need you to do a few things. One, I need you to go ahead and hit that thumbs up. 2, if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. 3, you're always more than welcome to share this video. If you are in any need of any of my services, I have the link to my website in the description box. Remember that we are going to be doing something different on this channel here on Wednesdays. I am going to be bringing you all behind the scenes of me building my online shop for you all. I'm super excited about that. We have a lot of things that's going to be happening in For the Marriage in the month of November. I am super excited about, and I'm going to be sharing those things on Wednesday's video. Wednesday or Thursday? I think it's going to be Wednesday. So without further ado, I'm going to let you all go forth and do great things. But the biggest thing that you want to do is do marriage right. Until next video, BYE.